is where we would say, okay, we've got an opportunity to add one of these 7 applications. What would we want to add? So we say, okay, why don't we add a calculator? So by pressing either 1 or enter, that will add a calculator application. So this is page 1, as I said, of problem 1. And what we might do now is we might just show you also about some settings. Settings, and in particular mode settings, are absolutely crucial in ensuring that there's a commonality of answer form amongst your students. And it's also crucial if your students end up studying with this device in the exam. It's crucial that your students have their handheld set in the appropriate mode. So how would we do that? Well, we would go to the home screen, so press the home key and go to number 5, settings. And there, the ones that we're interested in mostly here will be numbers 2 and 4, document settings and status. Now the first one I'd like you to have a look at is number 4, which is status. And it tells you what version of the software your handheld or your computer software is actually in. And the most up-to-date version is 3.9. It also gives an indication of how your batteries are going, but it's very important that you check with your students to ensure that you have the latest operating system. For example, if you're working in 3.6, you don't have access to a powerful command called bounded area, which allows you to calculate the area between 2 curves very, very quickly and very efficiently. 3.9 has it. In other words, it's very important that you always keep up to date with the latest operating system. If you fall behind, then you might create an inequity, and the students in your class may not have the features that students in another class have, and that could be a problem in timed examinations. So the way tab works is a bit like pressing tab on a web page. It takes you to active parts of the screen. So if I press tab, see how it takes me through, and I tab to OK, and then press enter. I'm back at settings again. So if I press number 5 again for settings and go to number 2, document settings, this is really important. And in thinking about how this introduction was going to proceed, I need to make the comment that you would introduce this slightly differently if you're introducing it for the first time to, say, Year 10s as compared to, say, Year 11s, depending upon mathematical knowledge, but also depending upon what mode do you think your students will be best served by for the majority of the year. For example, if you're in a calculus, algebra, functions type course, then the best angle measure to be in would be radians. If you're in a course where students study a lot of non-right-angled, right-angled trigonometry, they don't need to know about radians, then the best mode setting would be degrees, for example. So what we have here is we have a document settings dialog box, and you'll notice that the display digits, you can either have your display in float or fix, and notice that that field has a bold border around it. It means that it's active. So let's say that we wanted to look at the choices for angle settings. So my suggestion would be to press tab through the fields, and notice that I've gone one too far. Going up, down also works. Notice that I now have the angle dialog box, or the angle field, highlighted, and if I press right arrow, if I press right arrow, the three possibilities are radians, degrees, or gradient. And so the idea would be, if you wanted degrees, you would press down on the navigation pad to highlight degrees and then press enter. You could tab all the way through to the bottom and then press OK if you wanted to. There's no need for that. So let's say that we're going to stay in radians. I'm going to go up and have radians highlighted and then press tab. This one, calculation mode, is absolutely crucial. And if I press the navigation pad to the right, the three possibilities are auto, exact, or approximate. So I think approximate is reasonably self-explanatory. What will happen there, and we'll see examples of this once we get back to the calculator application. Approximate gives answers in floating point decimal form. Exact obviously gives answers in exact form where it's possible. Auto also gives exact answers where possible. However, if the input is a floating point decimal, then so will the output. So a question for teachers and students is, do I have my handheld or software set in auto or in exact? So I'm going to show in a few moments' time an example of why students should always, 99.9% of the time, unless you're doing a special unit in middle school maths, say on SERDS, my feeling is that the calculation mode should always be set to auto, and I have a powerful example to show you why that might be. So just for the moment, what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this to exact, and then I'm going to perform a calculation or two, show you why exact is no good, and then come back and change exact to auto. So I have exact selected, so if I press enter, if you don't see a key light up, it means that I've forgotten and I've used the computer keyboard rather than the keypad, which I apologize for. So what you can do is you can press enter now and that would be done. If you press tab, you've got these other fields as well. So restore would return the handheld to factory settings. Make default would apply and save as default that, or save those settings as default settings, and that would be applied to all the Nspire documents. Press tab. OK is, if a document is open, the document settings dialog box will, as it says there, contains an OK button. If you select OK, settings are only applied to the open document. So if I press enter now, and then I go to number 4, which is current document, I'm hoping that we have a calculator application, and I'm hoping that it's set in exact mode. So what is the problem with exact? Why would you shun using exact? Well, I'll introduce a couple of things here. Each application comes with its own menu, and so if I press menu, up comes all the possibilities. And so under algebra, you'd expect to find the solve command. So if I press number 3 and then 1 or enter, here's the solve command. Okay, so if this is in exact, what about if I asked students to solve 2 to the power of x equals x squared for x? Now, when you teach with a CAS, I think that you need to think about teaching opportunities. And often teaching opportunities are lost if you are gung-ho and just press enter now without asking students some questions. And so a question you could ask students is, well, how many solutions do you think there is? students by inspection should be able to see that x equals 2 is a solution, x equals 4 is a solution, and if they know or if they've been introduced to graphs of 2 to the x and x squared, you'd imagine that there'd be a point of intersection somewhere around x equals negative 0.7, somewhere out where x is less than 0. But we can certainly see two integer solutions. And by the way, just notice that the syntax here for solving an equation is solve the equation, comma, and the comma is found down here, comma, the variable that you want to solve for. And so after a bit of a discussion, you could say to students, okay, what do you expect? And they might come up and say, oh, we expect some answers, x equals 2, x equals 4, depending upon the scope of the discussion. They might also mention x equals negative 0.7. You press enter, and you don't get any solutions at all. You get the equation rearranged, set to 0, and spat back at you. The reason being is that this is a transcendental equation. It's an equation that doesn't have an analytical technique available to be able to solve it. In other words, it's a numerical, graphical, in a sense, approach that needs to be taken. So if you teach a course where students are asked to solve such equations and then it's examined in a timed examination where students have to solve such equations and they have their handheld set in exact, they, in a calculator application, will not get answers to those equations. So if we now change from exact to auto, so we press the home key, number 5 for settings, then number 2 for document settings, and I've pressed tab there, so press tab and then arrow to the right, change that to auto, and then press enter, enter, and then go back to our current document. Well, we could type the equation out again, but what we can also do is notice the structure of the calculator application page here is that I've got an entry line where I have performed a calculation and a new entry line where we've got a flashing cursor. We can interact with old entry lines, and the way that we do that is by using the navigation pad. So if I press up once, that takes me to the last output, and if I press up again, it takes me to the last input, and then if I press enter, that takes me down. It pastes what I had in that old entry line into a new entry line, and if I press enter, there I get my 3 answers. The expected x equals 2 and x equals 4, and depending upon students' graphical knowledge, x equals negative 0.7, now 6. So I am going to show you some graphing in a little while, but I just wanted to illustrate the importance of exact versus auto, and in particular if your students are sitting timed examinations under a policy where Nspire CAS is permitted.